Hello, this is Mike Lodge. I am the business advisor. I'm glad you've joined me. This is a Friday afternoon, TGIF Friday, and I'm thankful that it's Friday. Fridays are my days off, but I had to come on today and do a podcast. Yesterday, I spoke about the CPI, and I talked about that I'm not happy with the CPI numbers. I'm not happy that inflation continues to live on. I'm just unhappy with the whole economy. But Carlos, my economic husband, called me and said, Mike, you said something wrong. And so I have to correct myself. And I did say something wrong. I will be the first to admit that when I'm wrong, I'm wrong. And yesterday, what I said was we had to have 3 months of inflation to get to a recession. No, it's 2 months of GDP downward numbers that gets us to a recession. The question is, did we get there? Well, first of all, most economists, I'm putting on my glasses because I have my notes for today. Most economists explain what a recession is in these terms. Do I agree with them? No, but let's say what they say, okay? What is a recession? It's a decline in a country's gross domestic product, GDP, growth for 2 or more consecutive quarters of a year. Consecutive, one right after the other. Preceded by several quarters of slowing down. So that's what most economists explain it. Now, did we have a downward turn in GDP? Yeah, we had it back in July of 2022. We had 2 consecutive repeats. Now, since then, we've had an up and we've had a down and we've had an over and an out, and it's just been a chaotic type of analysis of what does GDP actually do now. So anyway, so they said that we had to have 2 consecutive quarters, right? However, the NBER, which is the National Bureau of Economic Research, do you know how they describe a recession? They describe it as significant decline in economic activity that is spread across the economy and that lasts more than a few months, which the U.S. experienced. It doesn't talk about quarters. It talks about spread out. Now, if you look at our economy, we have had that done. If you look at inflation, it's been bad. If you look at the price of gas, that affects the economy. If you look at the price of food, that affects the economy. If you look at the price of rental and buying of homes, that affects the economy. So we haven't had really a solid type of economy, even though economists want to make you believe that. The White House wants you to believe that, but we haven't. All of us in America, and that's what I consider the economy, you and me, we are the economy. We have not had a pleasant experience for the last 2.5 years, or 3 years, if you want to call it. I want to read you what they say in their website, or as they explain what a recession is. The NBER's definition emphasizes that a recession involves a significant decline in economic activity that is spread across the economy and lasts more than a few months. In our interpretation, they're talking now, in our interpretation of this definition, we treat the 3 criteria, depth, diffusion, and duration, as somewhat interchangeable. That is, while each criterion needs to be met individually to some degree, extreme conditions revealed by one criterion may partially offset weaker indications from another. For example, they give a good example here. For example, in the case of the February 2020 peak in economic activity, the committee concluded that the subsequent drop in activity had been so great and so widely diffused throughout the economy that even if it proved to be quite brief, the downturn should have been classified as a recession. We have not had good economic data. We have all experienced this economic downturn as inflation rises and goes up. So it's basically not just 2 quarters of GDP downturn. It is what's happening in the big worldwide economy that we have in the United States and what's happening there. So indicators or items that you should look at would be real estate, food, gas, and so forth. Now, let's look at some other economic news as we're sitting here today. For those of you who are keeping track, okay? U.S. debt jumped by another $40 billion in one day. In one day. That's a significant economic downturn when you add more to debt. We are now at $33.55 trillion in federal debt, just 25 days after it hit a record of $33 trillion. At the current pace, the U.S. would add $1 trillion in federal debt every 45 days. Since 2008, the U.S. has added $24 trillion in federal debt, rising to 3.8 times what it was in January of 2008. Total U.S. debt is now officially up more than $2 trillion since the debt ceiling crisis ended. It didn't end, did it? The debt ceiling has jumped up. Even if it provided to be quite, I'm sorry, I jumped around, sorry. But under the new bill, the debt ceiling is effectively uncapped until January of 2025. How high, this is a question we need to ask, how high will the U.S. debt be in January 2025? This, to me, is a significant impact on the economy. U.S. crude oil production, which I'm happy to hear, okay? U.S. crude oil production just soared to a new record high of 13.2 million barrels per day. To put this in perspective, the U.S. was producing 12 million barrels per day at the start of 2023. That's a 10% increase in production year to date alone. We are finally seeing higher production levels than the previous high of 13.1 million barrels per day pre-pandemic. So the question is, we have to ask again, is more U.S. production the solution to the current energy solution? I would also say perhaps, but it will also lower the cost of delivering food to places, delivering goods to places. So maybe we'll start seeing even a good drop in food and gasoline prices. Now, you and I, the consumer, we're still not happy with what's happening with the economy. Consumer sentiment still remains pretty low, close to where it was in lockdowns at the onset of the pandemic. And that was reported by Jesse Wheeler, who is the senior economist of Morning Consult. It's safe to say the U.S. economy is in better shape than it was then. So it begs the question, why are Americans feeling so down about the economy? Question mark. The answer can be found in years of inflation on top of concerns about a potential recession and stock market volatility, going up and down. There's some mornings that you just can't talk, right? It takes a long time for consumers to feel good about the economy. And that's true. I don't feel good about the economy. Most of Americans don't feel good about the economy. We see these up and down swings in the stock market. We hear rumors that it's going to be a huge loss. So how can we feel positive about an economy that is not telling us, and how can we feel bad about an economy or good about an economy when we see politicians continue to lie to us about the economy? That is a big time question and a concern to me. And I said yesterday, why do they have to keep lying to us every single day how great the economy is? The White House comes out every single day and says how great the economy, and then what happens? We have black swans that come in and swim around and stir up the muddy waters, and we don't know which direction we're going in the economy because we have no clear fiscal plan from Washington, D.C. So Americans, I wanted to tell you one other thing. You know that as we look at the recession, there are states already in a huge recession. If you don't want to look at it nationally, we have to look at it on state by state level. In fact, there are 17 states where incomes are falling. Incomes are falling in 17 states. So Americans are feeling gloomy about the economy and their financial prospects, with more than half of the respondents to a recent CBS News poll say they're struggling to pay their bills. I hear that all the time from my clients. They're struggling. I don't get paid sometimes because my clients are struggling. It's that trickle-down thing. If you don't believe in a trickle-down economy, I tell you, when it comes to paying bills and getting paid, it's a trickle-down thing. So we have that problem. The reasons for the pessimism are clear. Not only has inflation chewed into their paycheck, but many people are also earning less, with census data showing the median household incomes dropped in one third of the U.S. states this past year. More than 17 states where households lost economic ground are clustered in the Midwest and Northeast, including electoral swing states such as Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania. According to the recent data from the U.S. Census Bureau, across 29 states, incomes didn't change enough to be statistically significant, while residents in only 5 states saw their incomes improve enough to be measurable. That's what the data shows. Many of the states where incomes fell last year have older populations than the U.S. as a whole. For instance, about 20% of residents in New Hampshire, which have the steepest drop in median household income, are over 65, compared with about 17% for the U.S. overall. So, as we look at those statistics, and as we look at recession, and as we look at the economy as a whole, we're not strong. We've had a consistent, steady increase in inflation. Although it's gotten slower, but we still have it. Inflation is still here. The Federal Reserve and the government fiscal plans, or whatever you want to call, are not doing their job. The Federal Reserve, as I've said in so many podcasts before, acted too slowly. We might not be in this situation if they would have acted quicker, but they didn't. They waited for several months, several quarters to go by before they took any action on the economy. The financial or the fiscal responsibility of the federal government has not been good stewards of our money, as I've said before. The overspending, the over push for war, and even with the bills that they have passed, have not helped the American people, even though they want to tell you it helped the American people. If you look at the Inflation Reduction Act, and I've talked about this several times, there were new taxes in that bill. And those new taxes came in the form of energy costs going up. Now we're going to have that same situation again. We are going to have our diesel, well, not diesel, but the natural gas prices go up because taxes went up as of January 2023 on those things. Same thing on coal. So if you look at the North on this side of the country, who heat with natural gas, who some of them still heat with coal, and some of them are still heat with heating oil, which were all taxed high. And then on the West side, they were taxed high. The clients were calling in and said, yeah, gosh, normally I pay about $300 and now I'm up to $900. I heard it time and time and time again. So if we look at the term of recession, this 2-quarter thing doesn't cut bait, okay? It just doesn't cut it. We have to look at the economy and the movement of the economy as a whole. And we have had downward movements. We have had Americans literally go into debt on their credit card. We have had the United States of America go to debt on their credit card, which is us, the American people. We have had a tremendous amount of car loans go into default because they can no longer pay their bills. If you go down to the auction houses, it is row after row of repossessed cars. So to me, I'm going to use the definition that it is spread out. The recession has begun. We're in it. And we're going to continue to be in it until we start thinking inflation and we're in a recession and we need to deal with that. We have to have good planning and we have to have good forecasting. And we're not seeing that coming out of Washington, D.C. or even Wall Street because they're so concerned that they need to tell this story to you that the economy is a beautiful place to be. But you and I know, as we live our daily lives, we have a problem. This is Mike Lodge. Listen, if you want to have any contact with me, and if you want to send me an email, just send it to thebusinessadvisor@gmail.com. If you would like to sit down with me and talk about business issues on a confidential basis, you can schedule a time with me at www.lodge-co.com. And those numbers are right here. Right there. You see where my finger is? It's right there. Thank God it's Friday. Everybody go out and have a great day. I will talk with you soon. God bless. Bye-bye.